Thank you. Gimme Credit is a US firm that was created in 1994 to provide advice to institutional investors on corporate bonds. So our role is in analyzing issuers of bonds, mostly in the US, but I'm heading the initiative on emerging market corporates. So we look at investment opportunities in the fixed income markets, and we pick bonds that we think are interesting for the point of view of investors. So we are a bit like a credit rating agency, except that we don't issue a credit rating, but an investment recommendation. So the perspective I can give you is from the point of view of institutional investors. Why would they be willing to look at bonds in general and green bonds in particular? And like Antoine said, over the last 2 years, since the financial market participants have acknowledged the need for climate finance, we've seen a very rapid rise in green bond issuance. In November, we hit the 100 billion US dollar issuance, and the perspective of that market growing are very large indeed. For Asia Pacific, there has been this very significant initiative from Fiji as the third sovereign issuer. Yet, in terms of volume, the risk that we see is that the big countries are going to capture probably most of that issuance, the big countries being India and China. And when bonds are issued, there is a significant transaction cost from the point of view of the issuer. There is some legal costs, there's some documentation costs, there's some certification costs, some credit rating costs. And issuing a small bond may not be that economical from the point of view of investors, of the issuers. So probably to gain the best benefits out of that rise in issuance, all the countries as a whole, or a few countries, can team up together to issue regional bonds. And we've seen green bonds issued by the World Bank and ADBs, and even some local regional banks like DBS or Yes Bank in India have issued bonds, which they will use to finance smaller projects in the area of competency, and thus achieving economies of scale. And I think that's really the chance that is offered to the region to come up as a group to achieve the economies of scale and raising funds through green bonds that will really make a difference and seize this opportunity of the rise in issuance volume.